In my head, she was more light than dark. Sandy hair, cheeky smile. That's the main thing I remember about her, that wee grin. Emma patted his shoulder and said, "Sorry, you don't need to talk about it." Oh, but I do. It's time I faced up to it. What I've always thought is that it was my dad dying. That was what led to it, like what do you call it, a chain reaction. He took pneumonia the previous winter and it killed him. It left my mum on her own with the 5 of us to look after. She couldn't afford to keep the horse and cart, so took us out hawking, on foot, out on the streets in all weathers. My brother Ronnie was running wild too, got into trouble with the police. I reckon that was what finally put the authorities onto us. Nash squeezed more paint onto the plate and sat down. I remember hearing the engines, a low rumble coming near. It was men from the social who came for her, but they brought the police too. I tried to shout to the others, but panicked and started coughing my lungs up and couldn't stop. My damn chest. So for a few seconds, it was me, only me, who knew something bad was going to happen. Obviously, there was violence, terrible violence. My mother fought them like, I don't know what. I never thought a person could make noises like that. Like an animal, screaming and kicking, fists, teeth, nails. She gave it everything she had, but the police held her down until the officials got my sister into their car, and that was it. She was gone. Emma looked at the photo, staring hard at the family, fully intact and unaware of the looming tragedy. She tried to make out their eyes below the scratch print and grainy shadows, as if she could send a warning back through time to reach them. "Surely he can't just take a child like that," she said. Nash swirled his brush in a jar of cleaning fluids and laughed bitterly. Well, they could, and they did. Salvage is a missing person mystery that delves into the tragic history of the removals of gypsy traveller kids from their families in the early part of the 20th century. The removals often weren't well documented, so it's a scandal that I think a lot of people don't know about. The story centres on the main character, Nash Lacklow, and it's about his attempts to find out what happened to his sister, who was removed from the family decades earlier when Nash was a boy. In the story, Nash is in his 60s and he's in poor health, and as the novel opens, he's been at the doctors and he's had some bad news, and then over the course of the next few weeks he's reflecting on his life, and in particular going over this awful traumatic memory from his childhood of his sister being taken away. And he eventually comes to the decision that he wants to find out what happened to her. And he enlists the help of his great niece, Emma, who's a fiery, passionate student activist. And they team up, and together they make a slightly unusual investigative duo as the story unfolds. So it's a story of family and of identity, but at its heart it's a story about hope against the odds. So I hope readers get all of that from it, but I also hope they learn about the richness of traveller culture and history. I've been inspired to write by my own family background. My gran and granddad on my dad's side were both from traveller families, and I did an oral history with my granddad just before he died, and managed to capture some wonderful stories from when he was younger. But at the point when I spoke to him, his memory was really patchy, so the stories always had a really unfinished feel about them, incomplete. So I came back to those a few years ago and started to work with them creatively and really just try and flesh them out and bring the characters to life. And just as a way of trying to understand a bit more about what their lives were like. So that's what has inspired me to write and what continues to inspire me. The highlight of my debut publishing experience has simply been being read, which is great, and having readers' feedback about what they enjoyed about Salvage and what they took from it. And I have had quite a few people say to me that it's given them new insights into an area they didn't know anything about beforehand, so that's brilliant. My favourite book from 2024 is a novel called Car by an American writer, Harry Crews, and it's about a man who eats a car. And I remember a friend telling me about this years and years ago, and I thought that sounds like an absolutely crazy idea for a story, and I have to read it at some point. So I finally got round to reading it this year, and it is amazing. It's strangely touching, actually, and at times it's uncomfortably detailed, but certainly eating a car, it's definitely not to be attempted.